I spent 32 years believing my loyalty was the mortar holding the Patterson family together, but it took only 5 seconds in a hallway to shatter that illusion. Standing outside my father's dining room with a tray of coffee, I froze as my sister's voice cut through the heavy oak door. She hissed that they did not need me anymore. Then came the blow that stopped my heart, my father whispering that they had to find a way to get rid of me. My life was measured in other people's emergencies. For the last 7 years, I had existed as a human shock absorber for Patterson Property Management, taking the hits so the ride would feel smooth for everyone else. If a boiler burst in one of our pre-war walk-ups on a Tuesday at 3 a.m, I was the one standing in the basement in my pajamas, holding a flashlight for the plumber. If my father, Gordon, forgot to pay the liability insurance premium because he was too busy grieving or golfing, and the line between the two had blurred significantly since Mom died, I was the one wire transferring funds from my personal savings to cover the gap until the business accounts settled. I was 32 years old, and I told myself this was what loyalty looked like. It was not martyrdom. It was simply the price of keeping the family intact. It was a Tuesday in mid-October when the fabric of my reality began to fray. Though I did not see the tear immediately, I was sitting in my office, which was really just a glorified supply closet converted into a workspace at the back of our building in downtown Briar Glen. My desk was buried under lease renewals for the complex on Oak Street. My sister, Lauren, had the office with the window at the front. She handled tenant relations, which mostly meant smiling at prospective renters and handling the Instagram account, while I handled the operations, which meant evictions, maintenance disputes, and code violations. I finished reviewing a lease and rubbed my temples. My phone buzzed. It was a reminder I had set for myself. Dad's cardiology aptee. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I picked up the landline to call him. He picked up on the fourth ring, his voice sounding distracted. The clatter of a golf club hitting a ball in the background. "Hey, Dad," I said, "just reminding you about Dr. Evans tomorrow. Do you want me to drive you?" There was a pause, then a sigh. "No, Nat, Lauren is taking me." Oh, I felt a small, stupid pang of rejection. I usually took him. I knew his medication list by heart. Lauren usually forgot to bring the insurance card. "That's fine," I said, keeping my voice light. "Just make sure she asks about the blood pressure dosage. It seemed high last month." "You worry too much," he said. "We have it handled." He hung up before I could say goodbye. I stared at the receiver for a moment. "We have it handled." It was a small phrase, harmless in a vacuum, but it sat heavy in my stomach like a stone. That Sunday, I drove over to my father's house for our weekly dinner. The house was a sprawling brick colonial that my mother had loved and that now felt too big and too quiet, like a museum dedicated to a time when we were a happy family. I let myself in with my key. The smell of roasting chicken and rosemary drifted from the kitchen. It was the meal Mom used to make. Now, it was usually ordered in from the bistro down the street and plated to look homemade. Lauren was already there, pouring wine in the living room. She was 2 years younger than me, but seemed older in the ways that mattered socially. She had the glossy hair, the easy laugh, the way of commanding a room just by standing in it. I was the one who blended into the beige walls, the one who fixed the Wi-Fi and cleaned up the spills. "Hey, Nat," she said, not looking up from the wine glass she was inspecting for spots. "You're late. I was dealing with the tenant in 4B, I said, dropping my purse on the side table. "The one with the noise complaints. I think I finally smoothed it out." "Riveting," Lauren said. She handed a glass of red wine to my father, who was sitting in his leather armchair, staring at the unlit fireplace. I went into the kitchen to check on the food. It was a habit. I always checked. I opened the oven, basted the chicken, checked the salad for wilted leaves. I was the operator. I made things function. When I realized we were out of sparkling water, Dad only drank sparkling water with dinner, I sighed and went to the garage where we kept the extra cases. The garage door was heavy, and the hinges needed oiling. I made a mental note to bring my toolkit next time. I grabbed a bottle from the case and headed back inside. The layout of my father's house was specific. A long hallway connected the garage entry to the kitchen. Running parallel to the dining room, the floors were hardwood, covered by a thick runner rug that absorbed footsteps. As I approached the dining room archway, I heard them. They must have thought I was still in the garage, or maybe in the powder room. Their voices were not raised. They were low, intimate, the kind of tone you use when discussing a cancer diagnosis or a tax audit. "We do not need her anymore," Lauren hissed. I stopped. My hand, holding the cold glass bottle, froze in midair. I did not breathe. I stood in the shadow of the hallway, just out of sight. It is becoming a liability. "Dad," Lauren continued. "She questions everything. The tenants find her abrasive, and honestly, she is depressing to be around. She acts like she is carrying the weight of the world, and it makes you look weak." I waited for my father to defend me. I waited for him to say that I worked 80 hours a week, that I had saved the company from 3 lawsuits in the last year alone, that I was the only reason he knew where his heart medication was. Instead, I heard the clinking of a glass being set down on a coaster. "I know," my father said. His voice was lower, a rumble in his chest that I had associated with safety my entire life. "I know," he repeated. "But she knows the books. Lauren, she knows where everything is buried. That is why we have to do it carefully," Lauren said. Her voice was sharp, clinical. "We cannot just fire her. She would make a scene. She feels entitled to the business because of Mom." There was a silence that stretched for 5 seconds. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "We have to find a way to get rid of her," Dad whispered. The world did not spin. My vision did not blur. It was the opposite. Everything became terrifyingly sharp. I saw the dust motes dancing in the light from the hallway sconce. I saw the slight scuff on the baseboard near my foot. I felt the condensation on the water bottle dripping onto my thumb. "We have to find a way to get rid of her." He did not say Natalie. He did not say my daughter. He said her, like I was a termite infestation, like I was a structural defect in the foundation of the house. Panic, cold and electric, surged through me, but underneath the panic was a profound, humming confusion. I loved them. I had dedicated my entire adult life to them. I had no husband, no children, no hobbies. Because Patterson Property Management was my marriage and my child, I had given them everything. And they were discussing my removal like a strategic acquisition. I could have walked in there. I could have thrown the bottle against the wall and screamed. I could have demanded to know what they meant. But something stopped me. It was the tone of my father's voice. It was not angry. It was not emotional. It was calculated. If I walked in there now, they would deny it. They would say I misheard. They would say I was being hysterical. And because they were calm and I was the one shaking in the hallway, I would look like the unstable one. I took a step back, then another. I retreated silently into the kitchen. I turned on the faucet for a second to create noise, then turned it off. I waited until my heart rate slowed from a gallop to a trot. I walked into the dining room. "Sorry," I said. My voice sounded thin, tinny in my own ears. I could not find the bottle opener. Lauren looked up and smiled. It was a terrifying smile because it looked exactly like the smile she had given me 1,000 times before. "Oh, do not worry, Nat. Dad has one on his keychain." I sat down. I unfolded my napkin. I watched my father slice the chicken. I watched him put a piece of white meat on my plate, the part he knew I liked. "Eat up," he said gently. "You look pale." I ate. I chewed the meat that tasted like sawdust. I swallowed the wine that tasted like vinegar. I sat there for an hour, listening to them talk about the weather, the neighbors, the upcoming holiday party. I watched them perform the role of family, and I realized with a sick, sinking dread that I was the only one at the table who had not been given a script. When I drove home that night, I pulled over on the side of the highway and vomited into the grass. Then I wiped my mouth, got back in the car, and drove to my empty apartment. I did not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the audio in my head. We have to find a way to get rid of her. The next morning, the war began, though only one side knew it was happening. I arrived at the office at 7 o'clock, like I always did. The cleaning crew was just finishing up. I made the coffee. I went to my computer to log into the main server. I needed to update the rent rolls for the upcoming month. I typed in my password. Access denied. I frowned. I typed it again. Access denied. I assumed it was a glitch. Our server was old, held together by digital duct tape. I called the IT support line, a third-party service we used. "Hey, this is Natalie Patterson." I said, "I am locked out of the admin drive. Can you reset me?" There was a clicking sound on the other end. "Miss Patterson," the technician said, "I see here that an admin request came in last night to revoke those credentials." "Revoke?" I asked. "Who requested it?" The technician hesitated. The request came from the primary account holder, Gordon Patterson. I felt a cold flush on the back of my neck. "Oh, I see. There must be a mistake. He probably meant to reset the guest account. I will clear it up with him. Thanks." I hung up. I did not go to my father's office immediately. I sat there, my hands trembling in my lap. Small changes. I thought, small enough to be plausible errors. When Lauren walked in at 9, she breezed past my door. "Morning, Nat." I stood up and followed her. "Lauren, I cannot get into the admin drive. IT says Dad changed the permissions." She stopped, turning with a look of mild surprise. "Oh, right. We meant to tell you. We are streamlining the security. Dad was worried about how many people had high-level access, with all the cyber attacks lately. You know?" I stared at her. "Lauren, I am the operations manager. I need access to the rent rolls to do my job." "I know," she said soothingly. She reached out and patted my arm. Her hand felt hot through my blouse. "We are just going to route those updates through me for a while. Just until the system is secure. You can just email me whatever changes you need, and I will input them. It is just a precaution. It makes my job twice as hard." I said, "It is just for a few weeks," she said, her eyes wide and innocent. "Why are you getting so defensive?" "It is standard procedure." I retreated to my office. Standard procedure. By Wednesday, the isolation escalated. I had a standing meeting with the contractors for the new roof on the Westmere building at 2 o'clock. I prepped my notes. I gathered the blueprints. At 1:30, I went to the conference room to set up. The room was empty. I checked my email. The invite was still there. I waited 10 minutes. Then I called the lead contractor. "Mike." "Hey, Mike, are you guys running late?" I asked. There was an awkward pause. "Natalie? We finished that meeting an hour ago. Lauren said you were tied up with a personal emergency, so we went ahead without you. We signed off on the materials." I hung up the phone. I walked straight to my father's office. He was sitting behind his mahogany desk, looking at a spreadsheet. He looked up when I entered. Taking off his reading glasses, "Natalie," he said, "can you knock?" "You had the meeting without me," I said. I kept my voice steady, but it cost me every ounce of willpower I possessed. Mike said Lauren told him I had a personal emergency. Dad sighed. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Lauren thought you seemed overwhelmed this morning. You were snapping about the passwords. We just thought it would be better to take one thing off your plate." I was not snapping. I said, "I was asking why I cannot do my job, and lying to a contractor about me having an emergency, that undermines my authority." "Dad, see?" he said. He gestured at me with his glasses. "This intensity. You are vibrating. Natalie, you have been so intense lately. Ever since Mom died, you have been tight. Mom died 3 years ago," I said, "and you never really took time to grieve," he said. He stood up and walked around the desk. He leaned against the edge, looking down at me with an expression of profound, manufactured concern. "We are worried about you. Honey, you are working yourself to the bone. You are paranoid. You are seeing enemies where there are just people trying to help you." "I am not paranoid." I said, "I heard you." The words slipped out before I could stop them. He froze. "What?" "I nothing. I stammered. I pulled back. I knew if I mentioned the hallway conversation now, he would spin it. He would say I was hallucinating. He would use it as proof of my instability. I just heard you guys talking, I said, improvising, about streamlining. I just want to be in the loop. Dad studied me for a long moment. His eyes were hard, assessing. Then the mask slipped back into place. Of course you are in the loop, but maybe you should take a few days off. Go to a spa. Relax. Let Lauren handle the day-to-day for a bit. You look exhausted. It was not a suggestion. It was a command wrapped in a hug. I walked out of his office feeling like I was walking on a tilt. The gaslighting was so subtle, so interwoven with expressions of love, that it made me question my own sensory input. Was I too intense? Was I overreacting? No. I replayed the hallway recording in my head. We have to find a way to get rid of her. I needed a sanity check. That evening, I met Maya Rios at a dive bar on the edge of town. Maya had been my best friend since college. She was a paralegal, sharp-tongued and cynical, the exact opposite of me. I told her everything: the hallway, the passwords, the meeting, the concern. Maya listened, nursing a beer. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she set her glass down hard on the coaster. They are building a file, she said. What? I asked. They are papering you. Nat, the concern about your stress? That is documentation. The removing of access? That is restricting your ability to catch them doing something shady and telling the contractor you had a personal emergency? That establishes a pattern of unreliability with third parties. I shook my head. Maya, this is my dad, my sister. They are not corporate raiders. They are my family. Maybe they really do think I am stressed. Maybe they are just clumsy about it. Maya looked at me with pity. Natalie, wake up. Normal families say, hey, take a vacation. They do not lock you out of the server and lie to vendors. You heard them. They want to get rid of you. And because you are a partial owner through your mom's estate, they cannot just fire you. They have to make you incompetent. I stared at the condensation on my glass. I do not want to believe that. I know you do not, Maya said softly. But you have to protect yourself. Document everything, every conversation, every email, every time they cut you out. Write it down, date it, time it. I hesitated. It felt like a betrayal. Writing down my father's words as if he were a suspect in a crime? Do it, Maya urged. Please, if I am wrong, you just have a diary of a bad month. If I am right, you have a defense. I went home. I opened my laptop. I created a hidden folder titled Recipes. Inside, I created a document. October 24th, 2025. Overheard conversation between Dad and Lauren. I typed out the dialogue verbatim. I typed out the password incident. I typed out the meeting lie. As I typed, I felt a strange sensation. It was not relief. It was grief. I was memorializing the death of my family, line by line. The next day, Friday, I was in the break room getting coffee when Harold Devine walked in. Harold was our oldest employee. He had been the maintenance supervisor for 30 years. He had known me since I was in pigtails. He was a man of few words, usually communicating in grunts and nods. Morning, Harold, I said. He did not answer immediately. He poured himself a cup of black coffee. He looked at the door to make sure it was closed. Miss Natalie, he said. His voice was rough. Yeah. Harold? You watch your back, he said. I put down my spoon. What do you mean? Harold looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight from one work boot to the other. Lauren, she has been bringing people in after hours. Suits? What kind of suits? I asked. Lawyers, I reckon, Harold said. And this one guy? Calls himself a consultant, specializes in succession transitions. That is what he told me when I asked who he was. Succession, I asked. Dad is not retiring. Harold grimaced. They were asking me questions. Miss Natalie? About you? About me? They asked if you ever yell at tenants. They asked if you ever seem confused. They asked how you handle stress. My stomach dropped. What did you say? I told them you run this place better than anyone. Harold said firmly. I told them you are the only one who knows which end of a wrench is up. But they kept writing things down in their little notebooks. They did not like my answers. Thank you. Harold, I whispered. He nodded once, grabbed his coffee, and left. I went back to my office and closed the door. My hands were shaking. Succession transitions. How does she handle stress? They were not just trying to fire me, they were trying to paint me as unfit. If they could prove I was unstable, they could potentially challenge my position in the company, maybe even my inheritance. I opened the recipes folder. I added Harold's warning. I pulled out my phone and recorded a voice memo, whispering the details of the hallway conversation again, describing the tone, the coldness. I needed to hear myself say it. I needed to know I had not invented it. At 4:45 on Friday afternoon, my email pinged. It was a notification from our bank. First Merchants of Illinois. Subject: Confirmation of request. Signing authority. Update. I frowned. I had not requested any updates. I opened the email. Dear customer, this email is to confirm that we have received your request to modify the authorized signers for the Patterson Property Management operating account ending in 4492. As requested. The authorization for Natalie Patterson is being processed for removal effective November 1st. If you did not authorize this change, please contact us immediately. I stared at the screen. The request had been submitted digitally. Using my credentials, I had not logged into the bank portal in a week. Someone had used my name. Someone had impersonated me to remove me from the company's money. I looked up through the glass wall of my office. Across the hallway, Lauren was sitting at her desk. She was on the phone, laughing at something, twirling a pen in her fingers. She looked happy. She looked light. She looked like someone who had just solved a problem. I looked back at the screen. I did not call the bank immediately. I took a screenshot. I saved it to the hidden folder. Then I sat in the silence of my office, listening to the hum of the hard drive, and realized that Maya was right. The family I loved was gone. In their place were two strangers who would stop at nothing to erase me. I reached for the phone, not to call my father, but to call the number on the back of my debit card. I needed to know exactly who had signed my name, and then I needed to figure out how to survive the people who shared my blood. The morning sun over Westmere, Illinois, was bright and brittle, the kind of light that exposes the dust on a dashboard and the cracks in the pavement. I drove to the Westmere branch of First Merchants Bank with a singular, humming focus. I had not slept more than 2 hours. My mind was a loop of the hallway recording, playing against the reality of the email I had received. I parked my sedan between two large SUVs and smoothed my skirt before stepping out. I needed to look like Natalie Patterson, the operations manager, the woman who handled millions of dollars in real estate assets. I could not look like the daughter whose father wanted to get rid of her. Inside, the bank smelled of carpet cleaner and old money. I asked to see the branch manager, a man named Mr. Henderson, whom I had dealt with for 5 years. He usually greeted me with a firm handshake and a joke about the local football team. Today, he ushered me into his glass-walled office with a tight, pained smile. He did not close the door all the way until I sat down. "Natalie," he said. He folded his hands on the desk. "I was surprised to see you come in personally. We received the digital authorization. But I suppose you are here to confirm the transfer details?" I kept my back straight. I wanted to scream that I had authorized nothing, but Maya's voice was in my head. "Document. Do not react. I am actually here to clarify something." "Mr. Henderson," I said, "I want to see the request that was submitted. There seems to be a confusion about the effective date." He nodded slowly, looking at me with a strange expression. It was pity, mixed with caution. He typed something into his computer and turned the monitor slightly toward me. "Here is the submission from the admin portal," he said. "It came in yesterday at 4:30. I leaned in. The screen showed a PDF attachment titled N. Patterson, Voluntary Authority Reduction. I read the preview text. Due to ongoing personal health challenges and a need to prioritize wellness, Natalie Patterson is voluntarily stepping down from signing authority on all Class A accounts. Effective immediately. The words wellness and personal health challenges stood out like neon warning signs. I see, I said. My voice was calm, though my pulse was hammering against my collarbone. And who co-signed this submission? Your father, Gordon, and your sister, Lauren, he said. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. Natalie, look, I have known your family a long time. Gordon called me this morning. He mentioned you might come in. He said you were having a hard time accepting the transition. I looked at Mr. Henderson. The trap had already snapped shut before I even walked in the door. If I argued now, if I raised my voice and said it was a lie, I would look exactly like the person Gordon had described. Someone having a hard time, someone in denial, someone unstable. He said he wanted to make sure we handled you with care. Mr. Henderson added gently, he seemed very worried about your stress levels. I stood up. I forced the corners of my mouth into a smile that felt like it might crack my face. My father is very protective, I said. I just wanted to verify the paperwork was filed correctly. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I walked out of the bank feeling the eyes of the tellers on my back. They did not see a businesswoman. They saw a sensitive situation. When I arrived at the office, the air conditioning was humming a low, monotonous note. I walked to my desk, intending to print the bank email and file it in my secret folder. There was a thick, spiral-bound document sitting on my keyboard. The cover was printed on heavy cardstock. Employee Well-Being Support Plan. Natalie Patterson. I stared at it. Patterson Property Management did not have HR manuals. We did not have support plans. We had a handbook from 1998 that mostly talked about dress codes and not stealing office supplies. I flipped it open. It was 20 pages of corporate jargon that barely concealed a legal cage. Objective: to assist the employee in managing workload stress and emotional volatility. Action items: reduced hours, mandatory weekly check-ins with the Director of Tenant Relations, Lauren Patterson, removal of financial oversight duties to reduce cognitive load. Cognitive load. Hey, Nat. I jumped. Lauren was leaning against my doorframe. She was holding 2 coffees. She looked fresh, rested, wearing a beige cashmere sweater that made her look soft and approachable. I saw you found the packet, she said. She walked in and set a coffee on my desk. Hazelnut, your favorite. I looked at the coffee, then at her. What is this? Lauren? She sighed and sat on the edge of my desk, crossing her ankles. Look, Dad and I talked. We know you are struggling. We know you are burnt out. You have been carrying so much since Mom died, and we have let you do it for too long. It is not fair to you. I am not burnt out. I said, I am working. I am doing my job. But are you? Lauren asked. Her voice was tender, which made it terrifying. You missed the meeting with the contractors. You forgot the passwords. You were shouting at IT the other day. I was not shouting. I said, and I did not forget the passwords. They were changed. Lauren tilted her head. See? This is what we mean. You are paranoid. Nat, you think everything is a conspiracy against you. That is a symptom of severe stress. She tapped the document. This is not a punishment. This is love. We want to give you space to get better. We drafted this so we have a structure. Just sign it, and we can take all the heavy stuff off your plate for 6 months. You keep your salary. You just rest. I looked at the signature line on the last page. I, Natalie Patterson, acknowledge my need for support and agree to the terms of this plan. If I signed this, I was admitting I was incompetent. I was creating a legal document that said I was mentally unfit to manage the company. I need to read it over. I said. Lauren's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned. Of course. Take the weekend. But Dad really wants this settled by Monday. He is worried about liability. If you are making mistakes because you are tired, and we do nothing, the company could get sued. She stood up and brushed an invisible piece of lint from her skirt. "We are just protecting you." "Nat." She left the room. I waited until her footsteps faded down the hall. Then I opened my bottom drawer, took out my purse, put the document inside, and walked out the back door. I drove straight to my father's house. I needed to look him in the eye. I needed to see if the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who had held me while I cried at my mother's funeral, was really gone. He was in the den, watching a golf tournament on mute. He looked up when I entered. He looked older than he had a week ago. "Natalie," he said, "you are not at work?" I walked over and sat on the ottoman in front of his chair. "Dad, why did you tell the bank I was stepping down for health reasons?" Gordon put the remote down. He took off his glasses. "Natalie, we discussed this. You are not well. I am fine." I said, "I am 32 years old. I run the operations of a multi-million-dollar company. I have never missed a payment. I have never lost a file. Why are you doing this?" He looked at me with a sadness that felt rehearsed. "Do you remember the memorial service? For your mother?" I blinked. "Of course. It was 3 years ago. You blew up. Natalie," he said softly, "you started screaming at the caterers because they brought the wrong napkins. You were hysterical. You threw a tray." I stared at him. My mouth fell open. That never happened. The caterers had brought blue napkins instead of white. I had politely asked them to switch them. I had been calm. I had been the one holding Lauren's hand because she was too drunk to stand up straight. "Dad, that is not true," I said. "I never threw a tray. I never screamed. You see?" he said. He looked at the ceiling, as if asking for patience. "You block it out. You rewrite history to protect yourself. You have always been anxious. Natalie, even as a little girl, you were always so tight, so ready to snap." He leaned forward and took my hands. His palms were warm. It made me want to vomit. "We are just trying to help you before you hurt yourself or the business. Just sign the plan. Honey, take a break. Go to the lake house. Read some books. Let Lauren and me handle the stress." I pulled my hands away. It was a physical effort, like pulling them out of quicksand. "You are lying," I whispered. He recoiled. His face hardened. "See? There it is. The aggression. This is exactly why we need the plan." I stood up. I could not breathe in that room. The air felt thick with gas. "I am not signing it," I said. "Then we will have to make some hard decisions," Gordon said. His voice was no longer sad. It was cold. It was the voice from the hallway. I left the house. I sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes. Shaking so hard, I could not put the key in the ignition. He had looked me in the eye and invented a memory, and he had done it with such conviction that for a split second, I had wondered if I was the one who was wrong. That is how it works. That is the weapon. I called Maya. "I need a lawyer." I said, "Not a family lawyer. A shark." Maya gave me an address in downtown Chicago. Celia Markham. Celia's office was not in a glass tower. It was in a quiet brownstone on a side street. The interior was lined with dark wood and books that looked like they had been read. Celia was a woman in her 60s with short steel-gray hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. She listened to me for an hour. She read the well-being support plan. She looked at the screenshot of the bank email. She listened to the voice memo I had recorded of myself recounting the hallway conversation. When I finished, she took off her reading glasses and set them on the desk. "They are executing a credibility takedown," she said. Her voice was dry, factual. "What is that?" I asked. "It is a strategy often used in high-stakes divorces or corporate freeze-outs," Celia explained. "If they cannot fire you for cause because you are too good at your job, and they cannot buy you out because they do not want to spend the money, they attack your capacity. They build a narrative that you are mentally unstable." She pointed to the support plan. "This document? This is not for you. This is for a judge. If you sign it, you are admitting incapacity. If you refuse it and get angry, they document your hostility and refusal of care. It is a win-win for them. So what do I do?" I asked. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. "You stop reacting. Celia said sharply. You become a gray rock. You show no emotion. You do not argue. You do not cry in front of them. You certainly do not scream every time you have an emotional response. They will log it as a symptom, but they are lying about me. I said, my father is inventing memories. Let him. Celia said, you write down the truth in your own log, but you do not correct him. You cannot win a debate with someone who is writing the script. She leaned forward. Natalie, this is dangerous. If they are successful, they can petition for a guardianship. If they get guardianship over you, they control your assets, your decisions, your life. They can force you out of the company and into a facility if they find the right doctor. A chill went through me that was colder than the winter air outside. Guardianship? Like Britney Spears? Exactly like that. Celia said. And in Illinois, if the family presents a united front and the subject acts erratic, judges often err on the side of protection. She handed me a card. Secure your records. Get copies of everything, emails, financial statements, texts. Keep them off the company server. And for God's sake, do not sign that plan. Tell them you are reviewing it with counsel. That will slow them down. I walked out of her office feeling heavier, yet clearer. I was not a daughter anymore. I was a defendant. I went back to work that night. The office was empty. I needed to find proof that this was calculated, not just concern. I logged into my email. I had been locked out of the admin drive, but my personal work email was still active. I started digging through the trash folder, looking for anything I might have missed. At 9 o'clock, an email landed in my inbox. Subject, FWD, rent reduction offer, from Jake Henderson. 44gmail.com, tenant unit 2B. I opened it. It was from Mr. Henderson, not the banker, but a tenant in one of our smaller buildings. He was an elderly man who always paid his rent early. Hi, Natalie. I hope you are okay. I received this email from your sister yesterday, and it didn't sit right with me. I know you have always been fair to us. I don't want the discount if it means lying. I thought you should see this. Below his message was a forwarded email from Lauren. Dear tenants, as part of our quality assurance review, we are collecting feedback on our operations management. We have received reports of abrasive behavior from our manager, Natalie Patterson. If you have experienced any difficulties, rudeness, confusion, missed requests, please reply with a detailed statement. To compensate you for your time, we are offering a one-time rent credit of $500 for verified complaints. Best, Lauren Patterson. I stared at the screen. $500. She was bribing them to destroy my reputation. She was buying lies. I felt a surge of rage so hot it made my vision swim. I wanted to storm into her office the next day and shove this email down her throat. Gray rock, I told myself. Gray rock. I forwarded the email to my private account. Then I printed a copy and put it in my purse. The next day, Saturday, I went to the office to pack up some personal items. I wanted to get my things out before they locked me out of the building entirely. Lauren was there. She was always there now. She was standing by the copier, looking at a layout for a new brochure. Did you sign the plan? She asked. Not looking up. I'm having my attorney review it, I said. Lauren laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound. An attorney? Really? Nat? We are offering you a paid vacation, and you are lawyering up? That is so aggressive. It is prudent, I said. I turned to leave, but she stepped in front of me. Her face changed. The soft sister mask dropped, and for the first time, I saw the predator underneath. You know what your problem is? She said softly. I waited. You are too attached to being needed, she said. You think because you fixed the toilets and paid the bills that you own this family. But being the maid is not a job title. Natalie, and nobody likes a martyr who sends an invoice. It took the wind out of me. It was a precision strike at my deepest insecurity, the fear that my service had never been love to them, only utility. I am not a martyr, I said quietly. I am the reason you have a company to steal. I walked out before she could reply. My hands were shaking, but I did not cry. I needed air. I needed to talk to someone who knew who I was before I became the family fix-it girl. I called Evelyn Pike. Evelyn was my mother's best friend. She was 70 years old, a chain smoker with a rasping laugh and a heart of gold. She lived in a small bungalow on the north side of Briar Glen. She met me at a diner halfway between our houses. She ordered coffee and cherry pie. I ordered tea. I told her everything. When I got to the part about the rent bribes, Evelyn slammed her hand on the table. That little witch. She spat. I always knew she was jealous. But this? This is Gordon's doing. He never could stand a woman who was smarter than him. Your mother terrified him. You know, what? I asked. Mom worshipped him. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Your mother managed him. She made him feel like the king so he wouldn't burn the castle down. But she knew. She knew Lauren was cut from the same cloth. Vain and greedy. And she knew you were the one with the spine. She leaned in, lowering her voice. Natalie, your mother was worried about this. About what would happen if she wasn't there to referee. Did she say anything? I asked. She told me once, about a month before the end, that she had set up a failsafe. She said, if Lauren ever turns the family into a business deal, I want Natalie to have the final vote. I shook my head. There is no vote. Dad owns 51%. I checked the will. Evelyn tapped her cigarette on the ashtray. Your mother was a smart woman. Natalie. She didn't put everything in the will. She kept secrets. She reached into her purse and pulled out a pen. She wrote something on a napkin. Go home, she said. Go to your mother's old recipe collection. Look for the cookbook with the blue spine, the French one. She told me. If the day comes when Natalie stops being polite, tell her to check the bœuf bourguignon. I stared at the napkin. The bœuf bourguignon? Just look. Evelyn said, and honey, stop trying to get them to love you. You can't ask a shark to be a golden retriever. I drove back to my father's house. I knew they were out at a country club dinner. I had the code to the garage. I slipped inside. The house was dark. I went to the kitchen. The shelf of cookbooks was dusty. I found the blue one, The Art of French Cooking. I pulled it down. I opened it to the beef bourguignon recipe. Taped to the page, almost invisible against the heavy paper, was a small, silver key, and written in the margin, in my mother's looping, elegant script, if they ever say you are the problem, go to Harbor Federal. My heart hammered against my ribs. Harbor Federal Credit Union, not the business bank, a different one. I peeled the key off the page. It was stamped with a number, 402. I left the house without taking anything else. I felt like a thief in my own childhood home. Monday morning, I called in sick. I drove to Harbor Federal, a small credit union on the other side of the county. I walked up to the counter. I placed the key on the marble. My mother, Eleanor Patterson, passed away 3 years ago. I told the clerk, I believe she had a safe deposit box here. I found this key. The clerk, a young woman with bright pink glasses, looked at the key. Let me check the system. She typed for a moment. Yes, Eleanor Patterson, box 402. Can I access it? I asked. I am her daughter. I can show you the death certificate and the will naming me executor of her personal effects. The clerk frowned. Well, the box is flagged. It says access is restricted to the primary holder or the successor contact upon proof of death. I am the executor. I said, yes, but the box has a specific successor named. It is not Gordon Patterson. My pulse quickened. Is it me? Natalie Patterson? The clerk shook her head. No, the name listed is Samantha Klein. I stared at her. Who? Samantha Klein, the clerk repeated. Do you know her? I had never heard the name in my life. Who was Samantha Klein? And why did my mother trust her with a box that my father did not know about? I cannot let you in without Ms. Klein present. Or a court order, the clerk said apologetically. I took the key back. I felt a mix of frustration and wild hope. A secret, a name. This was a thread I could pull. I drove home, my mind racing. I needed to find Samantha Klein. When I pulled into the driveway of my apartment complex, a courier van was idling by the curb. The driver was walking up the path to my door. "Miss Patterson?" he called out. "Yes?" I got out of the car. "Delivery for you? Need a signature." I signed the digital pad. He handed me a thick, stiff envelope. It had the return address of a law firm I did not recognize. And below that, Patterson Property Management. I stood on the sidewalk and tore it open. Notice of mandatory fitness for duty evaluation. Dear Ms. Patterson, in accordance with company policy regarding workplace safety and executive competency, you are hereby required to undergo a psychiatric evaluation to determine your fitness to continue in your role as operations manager. This evaluation has been scheduled for Friday, November 1st, at 10 o'clock in the morning with Dr. Aris Thorne. Failure to attend will be considered a resignation. Signed, Gordon Patterson, President. I read the letter twice. The wind whipped my hair across my face. They were not waiting for me to sign the support plan. They were accelerating. They had scheduled a doctor, their doctor, to declare me unfit. I looked at the date, November 1st. That was 4 days away. I clutched the key in my pocket. I looked at the letter. They wanted a fight. They wanted to diagnose me. They wanted to erase me. I walked into my apartment, threw the letter on the table, and picked up the phone to call Celia. "I am not going to their doctor," I said when she answered. "Good," Celia said. "Now we fight back." I looked at the empty apartment. I felt cold, but it was a different kind of cold than the one in the hallway. It was the cold of a weapon being forged. "We need another way. Good luck. Dad, you are going to need it." I did not go to Dr. Aris Thorne. Instead, I sent a formal email at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, copying Celia Markham, my father, and Lauren. "I am declining the scheduled evaluation with Dr. Thorne as it is a violation of my employment contract and privacy rights. I am happy to undergo an independent evaluation with a mutually agreed-upon neutral party, provided my counsel is present to set the parameters." The response was swift, but it did not come to me. It went to the entire company. At 9:30, Harold Devine texted me a screenshot of an internal memo Lauren had just blasted to the staff. "Team, please be advised that our operations manager, Natalie Patterson, will be taking an indefinite leave of absence to focus on her mental health and recovery. During this sensitive time, please direct all operational queries to me. We ask that you respect Natalie's privacy and refrain from contacting her about work matters." I stared at the phone. They had bypassed my refusal. They had simply declared me gone. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the silence of a workday I was no longer part of. I felt a phantom limb sensation, the urge to check the maintenance log, the need to call the plumber, but I had been excised. Celia called me 10 minutes later. "They are moving fast," she said. "This memo? It is designed to freeze you out socially and professionally. If you show up at the office now, you are the disturbed employee causing a scene. If you stay home, you are accepting the narrative." "What do I do?" I asked. I paced the length of my living room. "I cannot just let them say I am crazy." "We pivot to the books," Celia said. "We stop arguing about your sanity and start asking about the money. I am going to file a formal demand for inspection of corporate records. As a shareholder, even a minority one, you have rights." She filed the demand that afternoon. It was a dry legal request for meeting minutes, financial statements, and changes to banking authority. Lauren's reply came the next morning. It was not a production of documents. It was an accusation. "Dear Ms. Markham, we are in receipt of your request. However, we are currently conducting an internal investigation regarding Ms. Patterson's improper access of confidential files and potential mishandling of sensitive tenant data. Until this investigation is concluded, we cannot release proprietary information to an employee suspended for cause." I read the email over Celia's shoulder in her office. "Improper access?" I asked. "I am the operations manager. I have access to everything." "They are trying to flip the script," Celia said grimly. "They are saying you were snooping. They are planting the seed that you were doing something wrong before they removed you." "It is a preemptive strike," I felt a cold knot of anger in my chest. They were not just firing me, they were criminalizing me. I need to find Samantha Klein. I said, "Who?" Celia asked. "The name on the safe deposit box." I said, "If my mother trusted her, maybe she knows something." I spent the afternoon searching. Samantha Klein was a common name, but the credit union was in Westmere, and Evelyn lived in Briar Glen. I searched for legal professionals in the area, playing on a hunch that my mother, careful as she was, would have used someone outside my father's usual circle. I found a Samantha Klein listed as a paralegal at Holloway Associates in Lake Hollow, a town 30 minutes north. I called the firm's main line, Holloway Associates. A receptionist answered. "Hi," I said. "May I speak to Samantha Klein?" One moment. The line clicked. Then a woman's voice, cautious and young. "This is Samantha." "Hi, Samantha. My name is Natalie Patterson. I am Eleanor Patterson's daughter." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. A silence followed, thick and heavy. "Samantha?" I asked. I cannot talk to you," she stammered. Her voice sounded tight with panic. "I was not supposed to talk to you." "Supposed to?" I asked. "Who told you not to talk to me? Please do not call here again," she said. "I am sorry." She hung up. I sat there, holding the phone. "I was not supposed to talk to you." That wasn't a denial of knowing me. That was an admission of instructions. And then I saw it, on the website for Holloway Associates. Under the Recent Cases tab, there was a blurb about a successful commercial rezoning in Briar Glen. The lead attorney was listed as Marcus Holloway. I Googled Marcus Holloway. And there, in a photo from a charity golf tournament 3 months ago, was Marcus Holloway standing next to my sister, Lauren. They were using the same firm. My mother had used the same firm that Lauren was now using, and the thought made my blood run cold. Lauren had found my mother's files at that firm and was using them against me. I called Maya. "I need a forensic accountant." I said, "Someone who can find money that does not want to be found." Maya gave me a name. Jonah Sutter. Jonah was a man who looked like he slept in his suit. He met me at a diner near the interstate, far away from Briar Glen. He ordered black coffee and listened while I laid out the timeline. The sudden removal of authority. The health narrative. The rush to push me out. "It is a classic squeeze," Jonah said. He had a way of speaking that was quiet and terrifyingly direct. When a family business suddenly tries to decapitate a competent operator, it is rarely about performance. It is about debt. "Debt?" I asked. "The company is healthy. We have full occupancy." "That you know of," Jonah said. He opened his laptop. "But suddenly changing signing authority? Restricting access to the server? That usually means they are moving money around and they do not want the person who knows the baseline to see the variance." He looked at the papers I had brought, the few bank statements I had saved before the lockout, and the rent rolls I kept in my personal cloud. "Look here," he said, pointing to a line item, "Devonshire maintenance, $4,000 a month for landscaping. Yeah, that is standard." I said, "Now look here," he said, flipping to another page. "D.M. Services, LLC, $3,800 a month, same address as Devonshire maintenance." I frowned. "That is duplicate billing, or it is a shell." Jonah said, "Someone is skimming, or paying themselves. And look at the property income for the Oak Street building. You have listed 48 units. The bank deposit only shows revenue for 42. Vacancies?" I suggested. "Not for 6 straight months in this market," Jonah said. He sat back. "Natalie, your father and sister are hiding a cash flow problem, and they removed you because you were the only one who would notice the math did not add up." I felt a wave of nausea. It was not just cruelty, it was theft. I drove to my father's house that night. I did not call first. I knew he would be home. It was Tuesday. He watched his crime dramas on Tuesdays. I let myself in. He was in the den, a glass of scotch in his hand. He looked up, startled, then angry. "Natalie," he said, "you cannot just barge in here. You are on leave." "I am not on leave, Dad," I said. I walked over and turned off the TV. The silence in the room was sudden and loud. We need to talk about the books, I said. Gordon stood up. He was a big man, but he looked shrunken in his cardigan. I do not know what you are talking about. I know about the duplicate billing, I said. I lied, pretending I knew more than I did. I know about the missing rent deposits from Oak Street. I know you are moving money. Gordon's face turned a mottled red. You do not know anything. You are sick. Natalie, you are imagining things. This is exactly why we took your keys. You are paranoid. Stop it, I snapped. The sharpness of my own voice surprised me. Stop gaslighting me. I am not Mom. I do not just smooth things over. Gordon flinched. The mention of Mom seemed to puncture him. He slumped back into his chair, the anger draining out of him as quickly as it had come, replaced by a pathetic, wheedling tone. You just do not understand the pressure. Nat, he said. His voice trembled. The market is tough. The taxes. The repairs. I am just trying to keep it afloat. Then tell me, I said, softening my voice. Let me help you. I can fix it. I always fix it. He looked up at me, his eyes wet. See, he said. See how you make me upset? You come in here, attacking me, making your old father cry. This is why we are worried about you. Honey, you are so volatile. I stepped back. I stared at him. He had just done it again. He had pivoted from confession to victimhood in the span of 3 seconds. He was using his own emotional instability to paint me as the aggressor. It was a performance, a masterful, instinctive performance. I realized then that I would never get the truth from him. He would twist every conversation until I was apologizing for his crimes. I am not volatile. Dad, I said quietly, I am just the only one who can read a ledger. I walked out. I did not slam the door. The next morning, I went back to Harbor Federal. I had spent the night reading the probate laws for Illinois. I knew that as the executor of my mother's estate, if I could prove that the successor contact was unreachable or invalid, I could petition for access, but I did not need to petition. I had something better. I walked up to the counter. I presented my mother's death certificate again, and this time, I presented a copy of my own birth certificate and a notarized affidavit from Evelyn Pike stating that she was a witness to Eleanor Patterson's wish that I have access to her personal effects. And I presented one more thing, a bluff. I spoke to Samantha Klein. I told the manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Gable. She informed me that she has no legal claim to the contents of this box and that her name was likely added in error or as a placeholder. She directed me to access it as the executor. It was a risk. If they called Samantha, I was done. But Samantha had sounded terrified. She would not want to talk to the bank. Mrs. Gable looked at the documents. She looked at me. I will need to make a copy of this affidavit, she said. She disappeared into the back office. I stood there, sweating in my coat. 5 minutes passed. 10. She came back with a key. Room 3, she said. I walked into the small but private viewing room. The clerk brought in the long metal box. She unlocked one side. I unlocked the other with the key from the cookbook. She left me alone. I opened the lid. Inside, there was no jewelry, no cash. There was a thick sealed envelope addressed to Natalie. There was a USB drive, and there was a document with a blue cover. The Eleanor Patterson Revocable Trust. I opened the trust document first. My hands were shaking so hard, I nearly tore the paper. It was dated 3 months before my mother died. It detailed the creation of a separate entity holding the deeds to 3 of the company's most valuable properties, the crown jewels, as Dad called them. But here was the clause that made my breath hitch. In the event that Gordon Patterson attempts to remove Natalie Patterson from her role as operations manager, or attempts to declare her incapacitated without the corroboration of 3 independent physicians, control of these assets shall immediately transfer to Natalie Patterson as trustee. My mother had known. She had seen the future. She had known that without her, Gordon and Lauren would eventually turn on me. She had built a poison pill into the inheritance. I opened the letter. My dearest Nat, if you are reading this, I am sorry. It means the day I feared has come. Your father is a man who loves to be the king, but he hates the weight of the crown. He resents anyone who helps him carry it, even as he demands they do. Lauren is like him. She sees people as mirrors to reflect her own importance. You are different. You see the work, and that makes you dangerous to them. Do not let them break you. Do not let them tell you that you are crazy for seeing the truth. You are the only one who sees it. The USB drive contains the scans of the loan documents I found in your father's desk. He has been borrowing against the equity for years to fund bad investments. If he pushes you out, it is because he needs to sell the buildings to cover the debt. And he knows you would never let him sell the legacy. Fight them, Nat. Not for me. For yourself. Love, Mom. I sat in the small, sterile room and wept. I wept for the mother who had protected me from the grave. I wept for the father who had sold me out for a loan. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. I opened the files. It was a graveyard of financial malpractice. Gordon had taken out second mortgages on the Briar Glen apartments. He had taken out a high-interest business loan against the commercial strip mall. And then I saw the emails. They were recent, dates from last month, between Gordon, Lauren, and a man named Ethan Crowley. Subject: Asset Transfer Strategy. Lauren: We need to move the Briar Glen deeds into the new LLC before the end of the year. If we leave them in the old company, the creditors will seize them when the balloon payment hits in January. Gordon: Natalie will see the transfer. She monitors the title alerts. Lauren: Not if she is not here. We need to accelerate the timeline on the transition. If we can get her on medical leave, we can claim emergency powers to sign the transfers. We just need to frame it as a restructuring. Ethan: I can set up the new LLC, but you need to make sure she is discredited. If she sues later, we need to be able to say she was incompetent and her objection is invalid. I sat back. The room spun. It was not just about getting rid of me because I was annoying. It was not just about jealousy. It was a heist. They were going to bankrupt the old company, the company my mother built, leaving the debts attached to it. And they were going to move the valuable assets into a new company owned by Lauren and Gordon, leaving the creditors, and me, as a minority shareholder of the old company, holding the empty bag. And to do it, they needed me gone. They needed me discredited, so that when I screamed fraud, the world would only hear, crazy daughter. It was survival. If I stayed, I would expose the debt and the embezzlement. If I was removed, they could reset the board and save their own skins. I put the documents back in the box. I put the USB drive in my bra. I walked out of the bank. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the parking lot. I was not just a victim of a toxic family anymore. I was a witness to a corporate crime. And I had the evidence, but I also knew that evidence alone was not enough. They had the narrative. They had the concern. They had the doctors. I needed to break their narrative before they broke me. I got in my car. I dialed Celia. I have the smoking gun. I said, Good, Celia said. Do not use it yet. For what reason? Because if you use it now, they will claim you forged it, or that you stole it in a fit of paranoia. She said, We need to trap them. We need them to commit the act of transferring the assets while you are watching. Then we hit them. I drove home. I looked at the dark windows of my apartment. I was alone, but for the first time in weeks, I did not feel helpless. I felt dangerous. We sat in Celia Markham's office, the air thick with the smell of old paper and the quiet hum of a radiator. I had placed the USB drive on her desk like a grenade. But Celia did not pull the pin. Instead, she covered it with her hand. We do not detonate this yet, she said. Her voice was low, measured. If we walk into court tomorrow waving stolen documents and shouting about fraud, they will pivot. They will say you are a disgruntled employee who hacked the system. They will make the story about your behavior, not their theft. So what do we do? I asked. I felt a vibration under my skin. A constant, low-level buzz of adrenaline that had not left me since the bank vault. We become boring. Celia said, We become agonizingly, relentlessly bureaucratic. We file narrow motions. We request specific audits based on your rights as a shareholder. We force them to deny us on the record. We build a timeline so dense with facts that there is no room for their emotional narrative. She looked me in the eye. Natalie, they want a scene. They want you to storm into the office or scream at your sister in a parking lot. That gives them the footage they need to prove you are unstable. We are going to starve them of drama. I nodded. It felt counterintuitive. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to my father's house and shake him until the truth fell out of his pockets. But I understood the assignment. I had to be a ghost in my own life. Present, watching, but silent. The legal strategy was sound, but the social reality was a suffocation I had not anticipated. 2 days later, I ran into my Aunt Linda at the grocery store in Briar Glen. Linda was my father's younger sister, a woman who communicated primarily through casseroles and Facebook comments. I saw her in the produce aisle. I instinctively smiled and raised my hand to wave. Linda froze. Her eyes widened, darting to my cart, then to my face, then to the exit, as if measuring the distance to safety. "Natalie," she said. Her voice was an octave higher than usual. "Oh, honey, I did not expect to see you." "Out? Out?" I asked. "I am just buying apples." "Linda." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper that carried more judgment than a shout. "We heard about your break. Lauren told us everything. She said you are staying at the apartment to rest. Are you sleeping okay? You look tight around the eyes." I gripped the handle of my cart. Lauren had not just said I was on leave. She had implied I was an invalid. "I am fine." "Linda," I said, "I am just taking some time to handle administrative things." Linda reached out and patted my hand. Her touch was light, skittish. "It is okay to not be okay." "Sweetie, Gordon is heartbroken. You know, he told us how hard he tried to keep you on track. He is just sick with worry. The narrative was already cement. Gordon was the grieving, benevolent patriarch. I was the fragile, spiraling daughter. I pulled my hand away. "Tell him I am sleeping just fine." I said. I walked away, leaving my cart behind. I could feel her eyes on my back, pitying and terrified. The isolation was not just professional anymore. They were amputating me from the community. That afternoon, I received a text from Harold Devine. "Can we talk?" "Not at the shop. The park by the river. 4 o'clock. I parked my car near the boat launch. The river was gray and choppy, reflecting the steel sky. Harold was sitting on a bench, his shoulders hunched inside his canvas work jacket. He looked smaller than I remembered. I sat down next to him. He did not look at me. He stared at his boots, which were stained with paint and drywall dust. "I signed something," he said. I waited. "Lauren called me into the office last week." He continued. "She had a stack of papers, said it was routine HR updates, insurance forms, liability waivers. She was talking fast. You know how she does, smiling, asking about my grandkids." He took a breath that shuddered in his chest. One of them was a statement. Harold said, "I didn't read it good enough. Miss Natalie, I thought it was just acknowledging the new safety protocols. But after I signed it, she put it in a different folder. And then yesterday, I heard her on the phone with a lawyer. She said, 'We have the maintenance supervisor's statement on record regarding her workplace volatility.'" He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. "It said you threw tools. It said you screamed at tenants. I never saw you do those things. Miss Natalie, you are the steadiest person I know." I felt a hollow ache in my stomach. Harold was a good man. He was collateral damage. "It is okay." "Harold," I said. "It ain't okay," he said fiercely. I went back to ask for the paper back. She told me if I made a fuss, they'd review my pension eligibility. I got 3 years left. "Miss Natalie, I can't lose that pension." I put a hand on his arm. "Listen to me. I am going to fight this, but I need to know if you are willing to tell the truth if it comes down to it. Not in public, not where she can hurt you, but to a judge, in a closed room?" Harold nodded. "I will tell the truth. Just don't make me look like a fool in front of the crew. I promise." I said, He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. I took a picture of the vendor list when she had the file open. I thought maybe it would help. I unfolded the paper. It was a list of active contracts. I said softly. I took the list to Jonah Sutter. We met in his office, a small room above a bakery that smelled permanently of yeast and burnt coffee. Jonah scanned the list, his eyes moving back and forth like a reader of hieroglyphics. He stopped at one entry, Apex Solutions, LLC. He read, consulting fees, $6,000 a month. He typed the name into a database on his laptop. Apex Solutions, he muttered. Registered agent is a corporate service company in Delaware. But let's look at the mailing address for the invoices. He clicked a few more keys. Here we go, he said. The mailing address matches a P.O. box in Lake Hollow, and that P.O. box is linked to another entity, Crowley Holdings. I froze. Crowley? Ethan Crowley, Jonah said. Your sister's fiancé. The world tilted on its axis. Ethan was a handsome, vaguely employed man who played tennis and nodded politely at family dinners. I had always thought of him as Lauren's accessory, a prop she used to look successful. He is not just the boyfriend, Jonah said, turning the screen toward me. He is the laundry machine. They are funneling company money into Apex Solutions, which goes to Crowley Holdings. That is how they are getting the cash out before the transfer. I felt a sick kind of clarity. It was not just Gordon trying to save himself. It was a coordinated raid. Lauren and Ethan were stripping the copper wiring out of the walls while Dad distracted me with sob stories about his health. Ethan is in on it, I said. He is not just marrying her. He is an accomplice. Jonah nodded. And that gives us leverage. If we can prove Ethan knowingly received stolen funds. He is personally liable, and people like Ethan, guys who live on credit and charm, they usually do not like the idea of prison. I went home that night and sat in the dark. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was 11:30. Sender. Dad. I picked it up. Please stop. Nat, you are going to ruin us. We can still fix this if you just walk away. Don't make me destroy your memory of us. I stared at the screen. You are going to ruin us. Not I miss you. Not let's talk. He was afraid. For the first time, I heard the tremor of genuine terror in his voice. But it was not fear for my well-being. It was fear of exposure. He knew I had the scent. He knew I was not the tight, anxious little girl he could pat on the head anymore. I did not reply. I took a screenshot. I saved it to the cloud. The next day, I went to see Evelyn Pike again. I needed to understand the history of this betrayal. I needed to know how a family rots from the inside out. Evelyn was gardening, aggressively pruning a rose bush as if it had personally offended her. She saw me and stripped off her gloves. Come inside, she said. I made tea. We sat in her sunroom. Evelyn, I said, did Mom know? About the debt? Evelyn sighed. She traced the rim of her cup. She knew your father had a gambling heart. Not with cards, but with deals. He always wanted to be the tycoon. He hated the slow, boring work of property management. He wanted the flip, the big score. She looked out the window. 10 years ago, he got into some bad land deals in Florida. He lost a lot. Your mother covered it up. She refinanced the buildings quietly to pay off his mess. Why didn't she leave him? I asked. Evelyn looked at me. Her eyes were sad and ancient. She thought about it. She came to my house one night with a suitcase. She said, I can't do it anymore. Evie, he is draining me dry. So why did she go back? Because of you, Evelyn said. Me? Gordon told her that if she divorced him, he would fight for full custody. He would drag it out for years. He would dissolve the company assets to pay for the lawyers. She realized that if she left, he would burn everything down, and there would be nothing left for you and Lauren. She stayed to protect the inheritance. She stayed to be the firewall between his recklessness and your future. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. My mother's marriage had not been a partnership. It had been a hostage situation, and she had stayed in the cage to make sure I would have a key. She loved you so much, Evelyn said. But it was a heavy love. Natalie, She sacrificed her peace for your security. And now the firewall is gone. I finished, and he is burning it down anyway. Evelyn reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then you have to be the fire extinguisher, she said, or the demolition crew, whichever works faster. I left Evelyn's house with a new resolve. I was not just fighting for money. I was fighting to validate my mother's sacrifice. But the enemy was escalating. 2 days later, a process server knocked on my door at 7 a.m. He handed me a thick envelope. It was not a lawsuit. It was a draft petition. In re, the guardianship of Natalie Patterson. I read the cover letter. It was from Holloway Associates. Dear Ms. Patterson, enclosed is a draft of a petition for guardianship that our clients, Gordon and Lauren Patterson, intend to file with the Circuit Court of Briar Glen. They are taking this step with heavy hearts, motivated solely by a desire to ensure your safety and the proper management of your affairs given your recent pattern of erratic and self-destructive behavior. The filing cites multiple incidents of workplace volatility, paranoia, refusal of medical intervention, and estrangement from reality. Our clients are willing to withhold this filing if you agree to the terms of the previously submitted well-being support plan and resign your position as operations manager immediately. I dropped the papers on the floor. It was the nuclear option. They were threatening to legally erase my adulthood. They were going to stand up in court and say I was too crazy to handle my own money, my own life. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. If they filed this, it became public record. Even if I won, the accusation would stick. Natalie Patterson, the one whose family tried to commit her. I called Celia. I was hyperventilating. They are going to file for guardianship. I gasped. Celia was calm. Okay, listen to me. Breathe. This is a threat. Natalie, it is a draft. They have not filed it yet, but they will. I said, they have statements. They have Harold's signature. They have Dad's lies. So we preempt them. Celia said, we take the gun out of their hand. How? You get an evaluation, she said. No, I shouted. I am not going to their doctor. Not theirs. Celia said, ours. You go to a forensic psychiatrist. Someone unimpeachable. Someone with credentials that make Dr. Thorne look like a palm reader. You submit to a full battery of tests. Cognitive, personality, competency. But that is humiliating, I said. I have to prove I am sane? Yes, Celia said. It is humiliating, and it is necessary. Because when we walk into court and they say, she is crazy, we do not say, no, she isn't. We hand the judge a 500-page report from the head of psychiatry at University Hospital that says you are the sanest person in the room. We seal the result unless they file. It is an insurance policy. I closed my eyes. I hated it. I hated that they had forced me into a position where I had to pay a stranger to certify my reality. Fine, I whispered. Set it up. The evaluation took 2 days. It was grueling. I sat in a sterile office in Chicago with Dr. Julian Vance, a man with a beard like Freud and eyes that missed nothing. I answered hundreds of questions. I solved puzzles. I talked about my mother. I talked about the hallway. I felt like a specimen under a microscope. Every time I paused, every time I cried, I worried I was failing. At the end of the second day, Dr. Vance closed his folder. Miss Patterson, he said, you are grieving. You are under immense stress. You are angry, but you are not pathological. In fact, your cognitive scores are in the 99th percentile for executive function. You are hypercompetent. He leaned forward. And that, I suspect, is the real problem for your family. I walked out of his office into the biting November wind. I had the certificate of sanity, but it felt like a hollow victory. I was sane, but I was still being hunted. I needed to go on the offensive. I needed to know exactly when they were planning to pull the trigger on the assets. I called Darren Wolfe. Darren was a former investigative journalist who had been fired from the Tribune for being too aggressive. Now he worked out of a loft in the city, tracking money for people who did not want to involve the police. He was a wiry man with restless energy. He listened to my story while pacing his office, throwing a tennis ball against the wall. "So we have the motive, debt and greed," he said. "We have the method, guardianship and discrediting. What we need is the timeline. Can you find it?" I asked. Darren caught the ball. "If they are moving real estate, they need title companies. They need escrow agents. They need to file deeds. And if they are doing it through a shell like Apex, there is a paper trail." He sat down at his computer. "Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours were a blur of waiting. I stayed in my apartment. I did not answer my phone when my father called. I did not answer the door when Lauren came by, knocking softly and calling out, "Nat, are you in there? We just want to drop off some soup," as if broth could fix a felony. On the second day, Darren called. "Meet me at the diner," he said. I drove there fast. Darren was sitting in a back booth. He had a file folder open. "I found it," he said. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was an internal email from a title company in Westmere. Darren had sources everywhere. R.E. Closing schedule. Patterson/Crowley. Holdings. Closing date. November 14th, 2025. Properties. 1400 Oak Street. The Briar Glen Commercial Plaza. The Westmere duplexes. November 14th. I said, "That is 2 weeks from today." Darren said. He tapped the paper. "And here's the kicker. They are structuring it as a distressed asset sale. They are selling the properties from Patterson Property Management to Crowley Holdings for 60 cents on the dollar." "Why?" I asked. "To create a loss on the books for Patterson," Darren explained. "It tanks the value of the company you are a shareholder in, and it gifts the equity to the company Lauren and Ethan control. Once the transfer happens, Patterson Property Management is a shell with nothing but debt, and your inheritance is worthless." I looked at the date, November 14th. If I did not stop them before then, they would win. They would steal my mother's legacy, ruin my financial future, and leave me with nothing but a psych evaluation and a box of old recipes. I looked at Darren. "This is it." I said, "This is the deadline." He agreed. "If those deeds are recorded, unwinding it takes years of litigation you cannot afford. You have to stop the closing." I paid for my coffee. My hand was steady. I called Celia. November 14th. I said, "File the injunction." "Are you sure?" Celia asked. "Once we file, there is no going back. It is war." I looked out the window of the diner. I saw a family walking down the street, a father holding his daughter's hand. She was looking up at him with total, blind trust. "I used to be her, I am sure." I said, "Burn it down." We filed the injunction at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. It was not a cinematic moment. There were no reporters on the courthouse steps, no dramatic music swelling in the background. It was just me and Celia Markham standing at a clerk's window behind a pane of bulletproof glass, handing over a stack of documents 3 inches thick. The filing was boring. It was aggressively, intentionally dull. Celia had drafted it to be a cure for insomnia. We did not use adjectives like betrayed or heartbroken. We used terms like fiduciary breach, unauthorized modification of banking privileges, and forensic discrepancies in asset valuation. We attached Jonah Sutter's report, which laid out the math in black and white. The duplicate billing, the missing rent, the undervaluation of the properties set for transfer. We attached the affidavit from the bank manager regarding the misleading wellness paperwork. We did not tell a story about a family falling apart. We told a story about a minority shareholder being defrauded by majority stakeholders. We stripped the emotion out of it until only the numbers remained. It was exactly what Lauren hated. She could not cry her way out of a ledger. She could not charm a spreadsheet. We walked out of the courthouse into the gray November light. "Now we wait," Celia said. She buttoned her coat. "They will be served within the hour. Do not answer your phone." I nodded. I felt a strange lightness, like I had finally set down a heavy backpack I'd been carrying for years. I had pulled the trigger. The bullet was in the air, but silence. I learned quickly, is not what happens when you declare war on your family. By noon. My phone was vibrating so constantly, It walked itself across my coffee table. It was not Gordon. It was not Lauren. It was everyone else. My cousin Sarah called 3 times. My Aunt Linda left a voicemail that started with a sob and ended with a guilt trip so potent it nearly made me buckle. Natalie, I do not understand what is happening. Lauren says you are suing your father? After everything he has done for you? He is an old man. Natalie, do you want to kill him? We are family. You are tearing this family apart. I listened to it in my kitchen, staring at the wall, tearing the family apart. It was a fascinating phrase. It implied the family was whole to begin with. It implied that the glue holding us together was my silence. And by speaking, I was the one doing the breaking. Lauren was weaponizing the community. She was calling every relative, every family friend, every neighbor, spinning a tale of a daughter gone rogue, a mental break so severe I was lashing out with lawsuits. She was turning their decency into pressure. She knew I was the good one. She knew I cared what people thought. She was betting that if enough people told me I was a monster, I would drop the lawsuit just to stop the noise. I turned my phone off. I put it in a drawer. I sat in the silence and forced myself to remember the emails I had read in the bank vault. We just need to frame it as a restructuring. At 5 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. I froze. I looked through the peephole. It was not a process server. It was not Lauren. It was my father. He was alone. He looked smaller than I remembered. Huddled inside his wool coat, his gray hair windblown, he did not look like a tycoon or a villain. He looked like a tired old man. I opened the door, but I did not unlock the screen. Go away. Dad, I said. Natalie, please, he said. His voice was cracked. I just want to talk. No lawyers. No Lauren. Just us. Just a father and his daughter. I hesitated. This was the man who had taught me to tie my shoes. This was the man who had let me sit on his lap and steer the car when I was 6. Meet me at the diner, I said. Route 11, the one with the neon sign. 20 minutes. I did not want him in my sanctuary. The diner was half empty. The smell of frying onions and stale coffee hung in the air. I sat in a booth near the back, my back to the wall. I watched the door. When Gordon walked in, he looked around nervously, as if he expected to be ambushed. He saw me and walked over, his gait shuffling. He sat down heavily opposite me. He ordered coffee. I ordered nothing. You look tired. Nat, he said gently. I am tired. I said, I am tired of finding knives in my back. Gordon winced. He wrapped his hands around the warm mug the waitress placed in front of him. He stared into the black liquid. Do you remember when I taught you to ride a bike? He asked softly. I stiffened. Dad, stop. No. Listen, he said. You were so scared. You had those little pink streamers on the handlebars. You fell off 3 times. You scraped your knee. And you were bleeding. And you were crying so hard. Mom wanted to take you inside. But I told you. Patterson women do not quit. And you got back on. He looked up at me, his eyes wet. I was so proud of you that day. Natalie, I held the back of the seat, and I ran alongside you until my lungs burned. And when I let go, and you kept going, it was the best moment of my life. I felt a lump form in my throat. I remembered that day. I remembered the feeling of his hand on the seat, the safety of it. Why are you doing this? Honey, he asked. Why are you attacking us? We are your people. I am not attacking you. I said, I am stopping you from robbing me. Robbing you? Gordon shook his head sadly. Is that what you think? Natalie, the business is complicated. You know that. We have to move things around to survive. The market is shifting. We are trying to protect the assets for you, for your future. You are selling the buildings to Lauren's company for 60 cents on the dollar. I said, my voice was flat. I saw the emails. Dad, I saw the closing schedule. Gordon paled slightly, but he recovered fast. That is a tax strategy. Natalie, you do not understand the high-level finance. Lauren has advisors. We are doing this to save the equity. By cutting me out? I asked. By declaring me unstable? By sending me to a doctor to prove I'm crazy? Lauren is just scared, Gordon said. He reached across the table and tried to take my hand. I pulled it back. She sees you acting erratic, locking yourself away, hiring lawyers, shouting at people, and she panics. She loves you. Nat, she just wants to make sure you are safe. He leaned in. His voice dropped to a whisper, intimate and conspiratorial. Look, I can fix this. I can call off the lawyers. I can tell Lauren to drop the guardianship talk. We can go back to how it was. Sunday dinners, just us. I felt a waver in my resolve. I wanted that. God, I wanted that. I wanted to go back to the time before I knew about the debt, before I knew about the betrayal. I wanted my dad back. What do I have to do? I asked. Gordon smiled. It was a relieved, hopeful smile. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Just sign this, he said. I looked at the paper. It was a resignation letter. I, Natalie Patterson, hereby resign from all duties and relinquish all claims to shareholder authority in Patterson Property Management. Effective immediately, in exchange for a confidential settlement, if you just sign, it all goes away. Gordon whispered, we can stop the fighting. You can take a nice long vacation. Go to Europe, find yourself, and we will take care of everything here. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at his face. The hope in his eyes was not for me. It was for the signature. He did not want his daughter back. He wanted the obstacle removed, the nostalgia, the bike story, the tears. It was all currency. He was spending it to buy my compliance. I felt something inside me snap. It was not a loud break. It was a quiet, final detachment. The tether that had bound me to his approval for 32 years simply dissolved. Dad, I said. Yes. Honey, he said, pushing the pen toward me. Did you ever love me for me? I asked. Or did you only love me for what I handled? Gordon blinked. The question seemed to confuse him. What kind of question is that? Of course I love you. You are my daughter. You are so helpful. You always were. Even when Mom was sick, you handled everything so well. He stopped. He realized what he had said. He had not said you are funny. He had not said you are kind. He had said you are helpful. His silence stretched out between us, heavy and suffocating. He could not answer cleanly because the answer would destroy the illusion he needed to survive. I stood up. I am not signing it. Dad, I said. Gordon's face changed instantly. The benevolent father vanished, replaced by the cornered animal I had seen in the den. You are making a mistake, he hissed. You are going to ruin us. Natalie, do you hear me? You are going to leave us with nothing. I looked down at him. I did not feel angry anymore. I just felt pity. You did that to yourself, I said. I walked out of the diner. I did not look back. I got in my car and drove until I could not see the neon sign in my rearview mirror. I pulled over on a side road and cried for exactly 5 minutes. Then I wiped my face, put the car in gear, and drove to meet Darren Wolfe. Darren was waiting for me in his loft. He had a whiteboard covered in diagrams. I found the leverage, he said as soon as I walked in. He pointed to a red line connecting Gordon's name to a bank logo. The loan on the strip mall? The one he took out last year? It is not just a corporate liability. It has a personal guarantee attached. What does that mean? I asked. It means if the company defaults, the bank can come after Gordon's personal assets, his house, his pension, everything. Darren uncapped a marker. Now, look at the transfer structure Lauren set up. She is moving the assets, the buildings, into Crowley Holdings, but she is leaving the debt in Patterson Property Management. I stared at the board. So when the old company goes under, the bank comes for the collateral. Darren said, but the buildings are gone, so they trigger the personal guarantee. Gordon goes bankrupt. He loses the house. He loses everything. And Lauren? I asked. She walks away with the clean assets in the new company. Darren said, she and Ethan get the gold mine. Gordon gets the shaft. Does he know? I asked. He thinks the sale price will cover the debt, Darren said. But look at the valuation. 60 cents on the dollar. It is not enough to clear the note. He is going to be short by about $2 million. My mouth fell open. Lauren was not just screwing me. She was sacrificing our father. She was setting him up to be the fall guy for the entire collapse. He is both the perpetrator and the pawn. I whispered, "He is desperate." Darren said, "He is trusting the wrong shark." My phone pinged. It was an email, not from Gordon, from a lawyer I did not know. Marcus Holloway. Subject: Settlement proposal. Without prejudice. I opened it. Ms. Patterson, our clients, Gordon and Lauren Patterson, wish to resolve this matter privately. Attached is a settlement offer. I opened the attachment. It was an offer for a one-time payout of $50,000. $50,000. My share of the company was worth millions. But it was the language that made my blood boil. This payment is intended to assist Miss Patterson in supporting her transition to a new career path and to facilitate necessary wellness treatments. In exchange, Ms. Patterson agrees to a full non-disclosure agreement regarding all family business matters and agrees to refrain from disparaging the company or its officers. Supporting your transition, they were trying to pay me off like a maid they were firing. They wanted to buy my silence. Rewrite history to say I left to get wellness treatment and seal the records so no one would ever know about the fraud. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound in the empty loft. They think I am cheap. I said. Darren looked at the screen. They are scared. Natalie, this is a lowball to see if you will bite. It means the injunction spooked them. I am not biting, I said. I'm going to chew through the line. I need more. I told Darren, I need proof of intent. The numbers show the fraud. But they can still claim it was just bad business judgment. I need proof they plan to hurt me. You need a smoking gun, Darren said. I thought of Harold. I called him. Harold. I said, I need to see you. We met in the back of the maintenance shed at the Oak Street complex. It smelled of gasoline and sawdust. Harold looked nervous. He kept checking the door. I found something, he said. He pulled a small digital recorder out of his pocket. We have these in the office, he said. For security. They activate on motion. Lauren had a meeting with that guy. Ethan. Last week. They were in the conference room. I was fixing the vent in the ceiling. I left the recorder on the ledge up there. He handed it to me. It is legal, Miss Natalie. The employee handbook says all common areas are subject to audio surveillance. You wrote that policy yourself 3 years ago. I nodded. I remembered. I pressed play. The audio was slightly tinny, but clear. Ethan, the closing is set for the 14th. But what about the injunction? If she files, it freezes everything. Lauren, she won't file. She doesn't have the guts. Dad is working on her. He is giving her the "we are family" speech. Ethan, and if that doesn't work? Lauren, then we accelerate the guardianship. We have the statements. We just need to make her look unstable in front of a judge. If she shows up to court screaming, or if she looks like a mess, the judge won't question the transfer. He will think she is just a paranoid heir trying to burn the money. Ethan, laughing, you are cold. Babe, Lauren, I am practical. Dad is a sinking ship. I am not going down with him. And Natalie is just collateral damage. She was never going to survive this anyway. I stopped the recording. She was never going to survive this anyway. It was the voice of a stranger. My sister, the girl I had shared a bunk bed with, was discussing my destruction with the casual indifference of an exterminator. This is it. I said to Harold, this is the intent. Thank you. Harold, I said, you just saved me. The hearing for the emergency injunction was scheduled for Thursday morning. I spent the night before prepping with Celia. We organized the exhibits, the forensic report, the email logs, the wellness plan, and the transcript of the recording. We are not going to play the recording unless we have to. Celia said, the judge might see it as aggressive. We lead with the math. The math is undeniable. I dressed carefully. I wore a navy blue suit, a crisp white shirt, and low heels. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I wore no makeup. I wanted to look like a machine. I wanted to look like the most boring, competent, rational person on the planet. When I walked into the courtroom, Lauren was already there. She was wearing a soft, pastel cardigan and a floral skirt. Her hair was loose and wavy. She looked like a concerned schoolteacher. She looked harmless. Gordon was sitting next to her, looking at the floor. He did not look up when I entered. The judge, the Honorable Marcus Sterling, was a man with a face like carved granite. He called the court to order. "Ms. Markham," he said, "you are asking for an extraordinary remedy. You want to freeze the assets of a privately held company based on the allegations of a minority shareholder. The bar is high, Your Honor," Celia said. Standing up, "We are not alleging mismanagement. We are alleging active looting." She walked him through the numbers. She showed him the duplicate billing. She showed him the valuation gap. She spoke for 20 minutes, her voice calm and steady. Then it was Marcus Holloway's turn. Lauren's lawyer. "Your Honor," he said, smoothing his tie, "this is a tragic case of family conflict spilling into the courts. The plaintiff, Ms. Patterson, has been suffering from significant mental health challenges. The company's actions, the restructuring, the temporary removal of authority, were not looting. They were protective measures taken to save the business from her erratic behavior." He pointed at me. "Ms. Patterson has been paranoid. She has been hostile to staff. She has refused medical help. This injunction is just another lash-out, a cry for attention." Lauren dabbed her eyes with a tissue. It was a perfect performance. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Patterson, do you have anything to say?" I stood up. My hands were folded on the table. I did not shake. "Your Honor," I said. My voice was clear. "I am not here to discuss my feelings. I am here to discuss the math. If I am paranoid, then the bank statements are paranoid. If I am erratic, then the title transfer scheduled for tomorrow, selling assets at a 40% loss, is erratic." I looked at Lauren. She stopped dabbing her eyes. She stared back at me, her gaze hard. "I am not asking for sympathy." I continued. "I am asking you to stop a theft. The defense wants to make this about my sanity because they cannot defend the transaction." I sat down. Judge Sterling looked at the papers. He looked at the forensic report. He looked at the date of the scheduled closing. He cleared his throat. "While the court takes allegations of mental health seriously," he said, "the financial discrepancies presented here are alarming. The timing of the proposed sale, combined with the undervaluation, raises sufficient concern to warrant a pause." He banged his gavel. "Motion for temporary restraining order is granted. All asset transfers are frozen pending a full evidentiary hearing. The status quo is to be maintained." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Lauren stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Her mask of concern vanished. She looked furious. Judge Sterling pointed a finger at both tables. "And let me be clear. I do not want to see any games, no retaliatory firings, no asset shifting. If I find out either side is acting in bad faith, I will appoint a receiver to take over the whole company. Do you understand?" "Understood, Your Honor," Celia said. "Understood. Mr. Holloway mumbled. I walked out of the courtroom. I had won. It was not a total victory. It was just a pause. But it was a foothold. I had stopped the bleeding. Gordon was waiting in the hallway. He looked at me with a mixture of anger and bewilderment. "You think you won?" he asked. "You just cost us a fortune in legal fees. You are bleeding us dry. Natalie, I am saving you from bankruptcy." "Dad," I said, "even if you are too blind to see it." Lauren walked past me. She did not scream. She did not hiss. She leaned in close, her perfume cloying and sweet. "You think this means you get a family?" she whispered. "You just bought yourself a war, Nat, and you are all alone." She walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor like gunshots. I walked out into the cold air. I felt exhausted, but clean. I had stood my ground. I had refused to be erased. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message. From an unknown number. There was no text, just an image. I clicked on it. It was a photo of a piece of paper lying on a desk. I zoomed in. It was my mother's letter. The letter from the safe deposit box. The letter I had locked in the fireproof safe in my apartment closet. Fight them. Nat, not for me. For yourself. The timestamp on the photo was from 10 minutes ago. My blood ran cold. Someone was in my apartment. Someone had broken into my safe. They were not just fighting me in court. They were invading my home. They were showing me that nowhere, absolutely nowhere, was safe. I stared at the screen, at my mother's handwriting, violated and exposed. The war was not just official, it was personal, and the front line was my front door. I stood in the center of my living room, my chest heaving. The phone burning a hole in my hand. The apartment was silent. The air purr hummed in the corner. The refrigerator cycled on. Everything looked exactly as I had left it that morning. The throw pillows were arranged by color. The stack of mail was squared on the console table. But someone had been here. I walked to the closet in the hallway. I pushed aside the heavy winter coats and knelt before the small, fireproof safe bolt down to the floor. The keypad was dark. I typed in the code. 1993. The year my mother won her first big contract. The light turned green. The heavy door clicked open. Inside, the blue envelope containing my mother's letter was there. It looked undisturbed. But the photo on my phone was undeniable. It was a picture of that letter, sitting on this desk, in this light. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. Paranoia, cold and slithering, wrapped itself around my throat. Who had the code? Only me. Who had a key to the apartment? Only me. And the landlord. And I remembered a day, 6 months ago, when I had given Lauren a spare key because I was going out of town for a conference and I needed someone to water my plants. I had asked for it back. She had said she lost it. I had believed her. I looked at the window. The blinds were drawn. I felt eyes on me. I felt the walls closing in. This was what they wanted. They wanted me to tear my apartment apart looking for bugs. They wanted me to call the police and sound hysterical. They wanted me to accuse my friends. I looked at my phone. I wanted to call Maya. But a treacherous thought whispered in my ear. Maya knows the code. You typed it in front of her once. I wanted to call Celia. Celia has the file. Maybe she leaked it to force a settlement. I stopped. I squeezed my eyes shut. No, I said aloud. My voice shook in the empty room. That is what they want. They want you to eat yourself alive. I walked to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. My hands were trembling so hard the water sloshed over the rim and onto the counter. I wiped it up. I am not crazy. I whispered, I am being hunted. I sat there for an hour, terrified to move, terrified to leave the apartment, terrified to stay. Finally, I called Maya. Come over. I said, please. Maya arrived in 20 minutes. She took one look at my face and locked the door behind her. What happened? She asked. I showed her the photo. She stared at it. Then she looked at the safe. Lauren? She asked. She had a key. I said, from months ago? I was stupid. I never changed the locks. Maya grabbed my hand. Her grip was tight, grounding. You are not stupid. Nat, you are normal. Normal people do not expect their sisters to break into their homes and photograph their dead mother's letters to taunt them. I pulled my hand away. I walked to the window and peered through the slat of the blind. I am scared. Maya. I said, not of them hurting me. I am scared that I'm going to start acting like the person they say I am. I doubted you. For a second, before you got here. I wondered if you did it. Maya did not flinch. That makes sense. She said, it does not make sense. I cried. You are my best friend. But that is what they are doing. They are poisoning my reality. If I go into court tomorrow and say, my sister broke into my house, without proof, I look like a lunatic. If I accuse the landlord, I look paranoid. They are pushing buttons to see if I will explode. Then do not explode, Maya said. She walked over and turned me away from the window. Change the locks, reset the safe code, and give the photo to Darren. Let him chase the ghost. You chase the money. I looked at her. She was right. The photo was a distraction. It was a flare thrown up to draw my eyes away from the ledger. I called Darren Wolf. I sent him the metadata from the photo. 2 hours later, he called back. It is a burner, he said. Activated yesterday in a strip mall off Route 12. Cash purchase. No surveillance footage available at the kiosk. I felt a heavy thud of disappointment. So we can't prove it was her. No, Darren said, but the timing tells us everything. They sent this right after the injunction hearing. It is a power move. Natalie, they are trying to show you that a piece of paper from a judge cannot protect your secrets. It is psychological warfare. Is there any threat of physical danger? I asked. Darren paused. I do not think so. If they wanted to hurt you, they would not send a warning shot. This is about leverage. They want you looking over your shoulder so you stop looking at the deal. Okay, I said. I felt a cold resolve settle over me, freezing the panic into something hard and sharp. Forget the phone, I said. I do not care about the phone. I want the financial report. I want the kill shot. I met Jonah Sutter the next morning. We met in Celia's conference room. The table was covered in stacks of paper. I have it, Jonah said. He looked tired, but his eyes were bright with the thrill of the hunt. He slid a bound document across the polished wood. Here is the anatomy of the theft, he said. I opened it. It was a forensic map of my family's betrayal. Jonah pointed to a chart. We traced the vendor payments. The duplicate maintenance company? It is not just Ethan. We found a direct transfer from the DM services account to a personal credit card held by Lauren Patterson. She used company funds to pay for her engagement party. She used it to pay for her lease. That is embezzlement, Celia said softly, piercing the corporate veil. And here, Jonah said, flipping the page, the loans? Gordon did not just borrow against the properties. He falsified the rent rolls to get the loans. He inflated the occupancy rates on the applications to the bank. That is bank fraud, federal bank fraud. I stared at the numbers. My father had lied to a federally insured bank, if this came out. He was not just going bankrupt, he was going to prison. And the asset transfer? I asked. Jonah nodded. We found the appraisal they used for the sale to Crowley Holdings. It was done by an appraiser who lost his license 3 years ago. It values the Oak Street complex at $2 million. The market value is $5 million. They are intentionally defrauding the shareholder, you, by selling the asset for less than half its worth. I closed the folder. This is it. I said, this ends it. Celia looked at me. Natalie, if we file this, it is over. There is no coming back. Your father could face criminal charges. Lauren could be barred from ever holding a real estate license again. I looked at the folder. I thought about the photo of my mother's letter. I thought about the wellness plan. I thought about the way Gordon had looked at me in the diner and asked if I would sign the paper so he could be comfortable. They made their choice. I said, file it. But before the court date, the judge ordered mandatory mediation. It was a standard procedure in family disputes, a final attempt to force the parties to resolve things without destroying each other in public. We met in a neutral office building in downtown Chicago. The room was beige and airless. A mediator, a retired judge named Mr. Gable, sat at the head of the table. I sat on one side with Celia. Gordon and Lauren sat on the other with Marcus Holloway. Lauren looked perfect. She was wearing a black suit, severe and elegant. She would not look at me. She spent the entire time typing on her phone. Gordon looked terrible. His skin was gray. His hands shook as he poured water from the pitcher. Mr. Gable cleared his throat. We are here to discuss a settlement regarding the injunction and the proposed asset transfer. Ms. Patterson has alleged significant financial irregularities. Mr. Patterson, you claim these were necessary business decisions. Celia pushed Jonah's report across the table. We are not alleging irregularities, Celia said. We are alleging fraud. We have proof of falsified loan applications. We have proof of embezzlement by Lauren Patterson. We have proof of a conspiracy to defraud a minority shareholder. Marcus Holloway picked up the report. He opened it. He read the first page. His face went pale. He leaned over and whispered something to Lauren. Lauren stopped typing. She looked at the report. Her eyes narrowed. "This is ridiculous," she spat. "These are just accounting errors. Natalie is twisting the numbers. It is bank fraud." "Lauren," I said. My voice was quiet. "You paid for your engagement party with maintenance funds. We have the wire transfers." Lauren glared at me. "You are such a snitch. Nat, you always were. You would burn the whole house down just to prove you are right." "I am trying to save the house," I shouted. I slammed my hand on the table. The noise cracked the polite silence of the room. "I am the only one trying to save it. You are stripping it for parts." Lauren laughed. "Save it? You were suffocating it. You and your spreadsheets. You and your rules. Dad, we can't do that. Dad, that is too risky. You strangled the joy out of everything. That is enough. Mister," Gable said. Gordon had not spoken. He was staring at the report. "Gordon? Mister?" Gable asked. "Do you have a response?" Gordon looked up. He looked at me. His eyes were empty. He did not look angry anymore. He looked exhausted. "I hated it," he whispered. The room went silent. "What did you say?" "Dad?" I asked. "I hated it," he said louder. "I hated needing you." He looked at his hands. "After your mother died, you stepped in. You were so good. You knew where every dime went. You knew every code. You fixed every problem before I even knew it was a problem." He looked at me, and there was a flicker of something dark in his eyes. It was not hate, exactly. It was resentment. Deep, corrosive resentment. Every time you walked into my office with a file, I felt small. He said, "Every time you corrected me on a compliance issue, I felt like an employee in my own company. You were so perfect, Natalie. You were so competent, and it made me feel like I was just in the way." I sat back. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. It was not because I was crazy. It was not because I was tight. It was because I was good. My competence was a mirror that showed him his own inadequacy. My loyalty was a reminder of his dependence. He had betrayed me not because I had failed him, but because I had saved him, and he could not forgive me for it. "So you decided to destroy me?" I asked. My voice trembled. "To get your pride back? I just wanted to be the one in charge again." Gordon whispered. Lauren let me feel like the boss. She didn't check my math. She didn't scold me. She just said yes. "Yeah," I said. "She said yes to fraud. She said yes to bankruptcy." Gordon looked at Lauren. He looked at the report. "I didn't know she was taking the maintenance money." He said. Lauren's head snapped toward him. "Excuse me?" "I didn't know about the credit card," Gordon said. He looked at the mediator. "I didn't know she was paying for the party." Lauren stood up. "Oh, do not do that. Do not play the senile old man. You signed the checks." "Dad, I signed what you put in front of me," Gordon shouted. He stood up too. "You told me it was vendor payments." He turned to me. "Natalie, tell them. Tell them I wouldn't steal from the maintenance fund. I borrowed against the buildings. Yes, I did that. But I wouldn't steal cash. That was her." I watched them. The alliance was crumbling. The pressure of the truth was cracking the mortar. Lauren looked at Gordon with pure disgust. "You coward," she hissed. "You are going to let her win? She is going to put you in jail." "She is not going to put me in jail," Gordon said. He looked at me, pleading. "Are you... Nat? You wouldn't do that to your father." I looked at him. The man who taught me to ride a bike. The man who sold me out because I made him feel small. "I cannot stop the bank." "Dad," I said, "once we file this, it is out of my hands." Lauren grabbed her purse. "This is a waste of time. I am not listening to this." She walked out. Marcus Holloway hurried after her, looking like a man who realized he was on a sinking ship. Gordon sat back down. He put his head in his hands. "I am sorry." "Nat," he mumbled. I looked at him. I waited for the feeling of forgiveness to wash over me. I waited for the urge to hug him, to tell him I would fix it. It did not come. The part of me that fixed things for him was dead. He had killed it. I stood up. Save it for the judge. Dad, I said, the final hearing was 2 days later. The injunction was set to expire, and Judge Sterling had to decide whether to make it permanent and whether to appoint a receiver to take over the company. I spent the night before rehearsing with Celia. Stick to the facts. Celia said, no emotion. When Lauren's lawyer tries to bait you about your breakdown, you pivot to the ledger. You are a machine. You are a calculator. I walked into the courtroom. It was full. Lauren had brought supporters, cousins, friends, people who whispered when I walked in. I sat down. I put the trust document on the table. I put the forensic report next to it. Lauren's lawyer, Marcus Holloway, started his opening statement. He talked about family tragedy. He talked about my delusions. He painted a picture of a jealous sister trying to sabotage her father's retirement. Then I took the stand. Ms. Patterson, Celia asked, why did you file for this injunction? Because the majority shareholders were engaging in a pattern of asset stripping that would render the company insolvent. I said, can you explain? I opened the report. I walked the court through the dates. November 14th, the scheduled transfer, 60 cents on the dollar, the duplicate invoices. Mr. Holloway stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Patterson, isn't it true that you were asked to take a leave of absence due to severe stress? I was asked to sign a document admitting incapacity, which I refused. I said, but you were hearing things, weren't you? You told people you heard voices in the hallway. I heard a conversation between two executives planning a hostile removal. I said, a conversation that is corroborated by the actions they took 3 days later. Mr. Holloway stepped closer. Isn't it true you are jealous of your sister's relationship with your father? Isn't this whole lawsuit just a tantrum because you didn't get your way? I looked at him. I looked at Lauren, who was smirking from the defense table. I took a breath. Mr. Holloway, I said, I am a 32% shareholder. My mother left me a specific instruction in her trust to protect these assets. My feelings are irrelevant. The math is the only thing that matters. And the math says they stole $400,000. I pulled out the trust document. I would like to enter into Evidence Exhibit D. I said, the Eleanor Patterson Revocable Trust. Specifically, the clause regarding the removal of the operations manager. Celia handed the document to the judge. Judge Sterling read it. The courtroom went silent. This document states, the judge read, that if Gordon Patterson attempts to remove Natalie Patterson without cause, the voting rights for the Class A shares revert to the trust. With Natalie Patterson as trustee, he looked up over his glasses. Mr. Holloway, were you aware of this trust? Holloway looked at his client. Lauren looked stunned. Gordon looked at the floor. No, Your Honor. Holloway said, then your client's attempt to remove Ms. Patterson was not only a breach of fiduciary duty. The judge said, it was a trigger event. By trying to fire her, they effectively handed her control of the company. The shock in the room was not explosive. It was a vacuum. The air was sucked out. Lauren's face went white. She realized, in that second, that her own trap had snapped on her leg. By trying to get rid of me, she had activated the one mechanism my mother had built to put me in charge. The judge looked at the forensic report. And regarding these allegations of fraud, the judge said, I am referring this matter to the state attorney's office for review. I am appointing an independent receiver to manage Patterson Property Management immediately. All assets are frozen. Mr. Patterson, Mrs. Patterson, you are ordered to surrender all financial records within 24 hours. He banged the gavel. Court is adjourned. I sat there. I had won. I had stopped the transfer. I had triggered the trust. I was, legally speaking, the person in charge. But I did not feel like a winner. I stood up. I gathered my papers. Gordon stood up. He looked at me. He looked like he wanted to speak. Then he shook his head, turned, and walked out the side door without a word. Lauren stood up. Ethan was not there. He had not shown up. She walked over to my table. She leaned in. Her eyes were dry and hard. You think you won, she whispered. I saved the company. I said, "You saved a pile of bricks," Lauren said. "You destroyed the family to save a pile of bricks." She smiled. A terrible, thin smile. "I hope it keeps you warm at night." "Nat," she said. She turned and walked away. "You think this means you get a family?" She called back over her shoulder, loud enough for the gallery to hear. "You don't get anything. You are just the janitor of a ruin." I watched her go. I walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was empty. The winter sun was streaming through the high windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I walked outside. The air in Westmere was biting, sharp enough to hurt my lungs. The wind cut through my coat. I stood on the steps. People were walking by. Lawyers, clerks, families, strangers. They did not know that I had just dismantled my life inside that building. They did not know that I was an orphan now, not by death, but by decree. Maya was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. She had a coffee in her hand. She ran up to me. "We heard," she said. "The receiver." "The trust. You did it. Nat, you won." She hugged me. I stood stiff in her arms. "Nat?" she asked, pulling back. She looked at my face. "Are you okay?" I looked at the street. I looked at the gray sky. I thought about my father's bike story. I thought about the wellness plan. I thought about the silence in the diner. I won the war. I said, "But I lost the peace." "What?" Maya asked. I touched the spot on my chest where the hollow ache used to be. It was gone now, replaced by a cold, quiet numbness. I don't know who I am. "Maya," I said honestly. Maya frowned. "You are Natalie Patterson. You are the strongest person I know." "No," I said. "I was the fixer. I was the helper. I was the one they needed. That was my whole identity. I existed to be useful to them." I looked at the empty courthouse steps. "I don't know who I am when I'm not useful to them," I whispered. The wind blew, scattering dead leaves across the pavement. I buttoned my coat, took a breath of the freezing air, and took the first step down onto the sidewalk. I had to find out. Thank you for listening to Revenge Stories. This concludes the story of the Patterson family, a tragedy of loyalty, betrayal, and the high price of truth. I would love to hear your thoughts on Natalie's choice. Did she win, or did she lose everything? And where are you listening from today? Please leave a comment below sharing your location and your reaction to the ending. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more dramas about justice, payback, and the secrets families keep. Thank you for spending your time with me. Stay safe and watch your back.